Welcome again, everyone. We're going to give everyone just a couple more minutes. We'll get started about 6 o'clock. In the meantime, again, if you haven't already, please feel free to play with the view options just to make sure you can see everything clearly and you can see the screen, the full screen, as well as you can play with the presenters. So you can either hide our faces or you can see them, I think. Hi all, thank you all for joining. It is now 6 o'clock. We have about an hour-long meeting here, so we're going to start promptly now at 6 o'clock. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Ashley Grace, and I will be acting as a moderator for this presentation today. So again, thank you for joining us. This is our second Dartmouth Bike Lane public meeting. Clearly, this one's a little bit different than what we did last time, where we had the opportunity to see everyone in person. So, but we want to thank you all for doing your part to help keep us and our city safe by staying home during these unprecedented times. We appreciate you jumping online and spending your evening with us. So with that, next slide, David. Hold on one second. Okay, so just to get everyone oriented, as you probably can tell, we're on a live webinar. Hopefully you all were able to access the webinar without too many difficulties. You can either follow us online. When you registered, you also may have received, or you should have received, a phone number you can call if that's preferable for you. And we will also be recording this meeting. We are actually recording it now so that we can also share that with folks on our webpage, especially for those who are unable to attend this evening. If you are still having issues or technical difficulties, please feel free to email us at bikes@denvergov.org. Or sorry, yes, bikes@denvergov.org. We have a staff member there who is doing her best to provide some technical assistance as we move through this presentation. Awesome. So tonight, I am joined by a number of my wonderful colleagues and staff here at the City and County of Denver. We'll be taking over different parts of this presentation, so you'll be hearing from most of us. These are the same staff members that were present at the in-house public meeting we held a couple months ago, so hopefully you're seeing some familiar faces if you joined us last time. And my name is Ashley Grace. I'll be acting as the moderator. I also work in the Department of Transportation Infrastructure in the design team as a community designer. So I work with both council and the communities and help provide overall coordination throughout Southeast Denver, as well as the managed design of a number of projects. I'm joined by David Pulsifer, who's a supervisor in our transportation planning team. He's been acting as the planning lead on this project. Also joined by Mark Daniels, an engineer and the project manager for this project. Bryce Hammerton, another engineer in the Department of Transportation Infrastructure and our lead from the design team. And then finally, Eileen Yazzie, a manager in our planning team. She will be providing overall project support as we move through this presentation and continues to support the project across the board. So I would also like to thank Councilwoman Kendra Black and Kathy Guile from her office for joining us and for all the great work they've been doing to help us coordinate and get the word out about this project. I also really appreciate, and the team appreciates, the effort they've put into ensuring that our project team clearly understands the community's ideas, thoughts, and their concerns. They've been wonderful advocates for the community and helping us better understand what those are. Next slide. And again, just to get us all oriented and on the same page before we kick off, just want to give you all a preview of what to expect, which is, this is live. We are giving a live presentation to you all. We will be pausing for both live Q&A as well as polling options. Questions can be submitted using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. There's a little call out that says Q&A. We are receiving those. I can see already our Q&A box is starting to get a number of questions submitted. We will be looking through those and addressing as many as we can throughout the presentation. We clearly won't get to all of them. We are going to create an FAQ that will then be made available within the next week or two. Once we've had a time to, we will get a full log of all the questions asked, and we will do our best to address all of them. Of course, if at the end of this and after receiving the FAQ, you still feel like your question has not been addressed, please feel free again to email us at bikes@denvergov.org. As a reminder, you probably again can see we are working, we are doing our best, just like you. We are adapting to this new normal for now and trying to figure out how to work from home and that kind of thing. So please have a little patience with us if you hear a child or a pet in the background. We hopefully have minimized that noise, but it may occur. So during the meeting, again, we will be collecting questions and addressing those. We do hope to foster a culture of respect, both the respect that we have for you all as valued community members, and hopefully the respect you have for city staff members. We want to carry that forward in all of our public meetings, not just this one. And then finally, again, we are recording this meeting. So if you miss something, you get cut off, or your internet breaks, or you have to go have dinner, you can always come back and revisit the rest of the presentation. The website there at the is on the slide you're seeing right now, bit.ly/bike paving. You can also, again, email bikes@denvergov.org if you have further questions. So before I kick it over, I just want to kind of give a quick recap of what the plan is tonight, which is that we are going to go over, well, a recap of the project background and the process that has led to where we're at today. As you know, we had a community meeting a few months ago. We heard a lot of feedback at that meeting and in the months since that meeting. We're going to talk through what we heard, and then we're going to walk through how both that and the data has really come together to influence the design of this project. We will then review the Bikeway design, and then finally we will close with the timeline and schedule for implementing this. So before I pass it over, I just want to acknowledge that, like this project, like most of our mobility and our multimodal projects, whether they're big projects or small projects, they require difficult conversations with the community, conversations that typically center around trade-offs. Denver as a city is growing rapidly. The population is growing, the ways we're getting around town is growing and changing and expanding, and also our safety concerns on the roadways are growing. And so those are all different issues that we at the city are trying to juggle with as we think about how to manage the right-of-way. To keep up with this, we are constantly evaluating what the highest and best use of the public right-of-way is for all modes and users. The right-of-way is not static, it is dynamic. Again, there are large projects and there are small projects, and each one of those gets its own deep dive of evaluation that's data-driven, that we really do aim to make sure is context sensitive. But when it comes down to it, when we make changes to the right-of-way, there are always trade-offs, and those are always difficult conversations. And I just want to acknowledge that at the forefront, that has been a part of this conversation, and it's a part of every project that we do. But so with that, I'm going to hand it over to David to kick us off with a recap of how we got here. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's coming out tonight and into their living room or bedroom or wherever you're listening or viewing, and really appreciate your time. And I want to say I wish we were meeting in person. Like when we were talking with Councilwoman Black about this, she said, you know, we do things differently in Southeast Denver, and you guys really show up and participate. And I wish we were all meeting together, but I hope this is the next best thing and we can have a great conversation. So just to get us all grounded, we're talking today about the East Dartmouth and the project's extents for this are between University and Colorado. And this kind of shows you where this project fits into our greater Bikeway network. We have network goals of providing convenient access to all of Denver and people who travel through and in Denver for convenient bicycle access. And you can see Dartmouth will play a great connection between the rest of our existing and proposed bicycle network. Just want to give a little background to where did this project come from. So going back almost 10 years now, this stretch of road was first identified in 2011 in our citywide bicycle master plan effort in Denver Moves Bikes. It was then reconfirmed in 2015 when we did an update to Denver Moves Bicycles. And then some of you hopefully participated in our 3-year comprehensive planning effort called Denver Right. And in Blueprint Denver confirmed Dartmouth Avenue as a bicycle priority corridor, Blueprint Denver is the city's land use and transportation master plan, which was adopted by City Council. And now it is an opportunity from this just being a talk to actually something on the ground with our street maintenance team, scheduling Dartmouth to be repaved. Now is the opportunity to design it, to improve it, and make it work better for the city. And a little more background in terms of that's the planning history. And this is how a project becomes an actual design and then implemented. So we've already met and we've done a lot of planning. We've looked at the data and analysis, and we will walk you through that. We've selected a bicycle type, and now we are refining it and being accountable. Many of you may be wondering why are we here? We met with you guys in February and told you what you think. And it's our intent to be accountable, to show you how we listened and how we incorporated your feedback into the final design. So Ashley, this is you.
It might help if I unmute myself. Oh, first flub. All right. So with that, we're going to take a quick break and ask you guys a quick polling question just to make sure we're all awake. So as you can imagine, outreach is also an ever-evolving field, especially this day and age. So with that, we're asking folks, we just want to know what is the most effective way to communicate to you about projects. So what was the most effective piece of information you received about this meeting? Was it via flyer? Was it from a neighbor? Did you read about it online? Did you see a yard sign? Or did you hear about it from your council office or your neighborhood organization? Give everyone just a few moments to fill that out. All right. All right, let's see what the results are. All right, so it looks like, wow, well, you know, not surprising. You heard about, the majority of folks, 36%, heard about it from their council office or neighborhood organization. I think that's definitely a reflection of just how involved both the neighborhood organization and council office, Councilwoman Black is in this community. So awesome, thank you. That is very helpful, as are the other notes on that. So with that, back to you, David.
Great, thanks, Ashley. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about community values, and that's something that we heard a lot about Dartmouth is, you know, we want to maintain this neighborhood feel, and want to talk a little bit more about the Denver Right planning effort. And one of the things that we heard from Denver, from residents, people who live in Denver, were these overriding themes and values. And these overriding themes and values go into the fabric of all of the work we do. And so we categorize these into 6 different groups: equitable and affordable and inclusive, economically diverse and vibrant, strong and authentic neighborhoods, well-connected and safe and accessible places, healthy and active, and environmentally resilient. So what's important to us when we suggest a project and propose to make a change in the roadway, that it is in concert with these values. And again, we have other other efforts that guide the city's approach towards mobility in Denver, including the Mobility Action Plan and the Denver Vision Zero Action Plan, which I'll address in just a few slides. So one of the things that Denver did is it adopted its Vision Zero action plan in 2017. And some of you may have heard of Vision Zero. And what it is that it is an international movement that states that no traffic death, fatality, or serious injury is a foregone conclusion, and that cities have a responsibility to make the streets safer, and that we don't want anyone to die or get hurt on our roads. And this graphic shows us that we are actually getting an increase in our deaths and our serious injuries in Denver. And so as a result, we need to make some changes. We also have some other trends that I'm sure you're all aware of, that more people are moving to Denver. And as a result, with these increase in our population and increase in fatalities, we have to make changes to the way we use the road and the way we design the road. We also have mobility goals. We want, the city has goals to get 30% of Denver walking, biking, or taking transit by 2030. And we also want to reduce crashes and serious injuries. So there's a relationship between the design of a road and the fatalities and injuries. And as you'll notice, a good way to think about this is when you're driving on I-25, you may notice that the lanes are really wide, and that's to accommodate higher speeds. And when you have wider lanes, it accommodates people going faster. And what you have in a heavily parked area, that can effectively reduce the width of the lane, but in a infrequently parked road, it makes the lanes operate wider, and it almost turns what is intended to be a narrow roadway into a very wide roadway, which is conducive to speeding. And we know that with increase in speeds results in increase in likelihood of fatalities and injuries to people who are vulnerable road users. So there's definitely a connection between roadway design and safety. And then you may have heard this in some of the information we put out in terms of a buffered bike lane, and that's what was the proposed idea. And so what Denver is trying to do is get more people to ride their bike and make it possible for more people to ride their bike. And this data was pushed out by Dr. Cog, which is the Denver Regional Council of Governments. And they did a statistically valid survey that looked at all of the people who live in the Denver metro area. And they found that nearly 2/3 of people want to ride their bike and want to be given that opportunity, but don't feel safe doing so presently. And when you do things like a normal bike lane or a shared lane marking, what you're doing is you're making it you're encouraging people who are already riding their bike to give them more mobility. And what we're trying to do is design a network that actually encourages the people who aren't comfortable now, the majority of Denver, to be able to ride their bike. And getting down to sort of this is the nitty gritty in terms of how we actually make a decision, how we pick a design type. We look at this graph here, the spectrum, and we look at how many cars are going on the road in a day. And we also look at the observed speed. We go out and take speed counts. And when we plot that, that gives us a good place to start for a design. And we can see where Dartmouth falls right now. Dartmouth falls in the bike lane, a buffered preferred. And we'll get into what a buffer means in a little bit, but a buffer basically, or what a buffer looks like. But a buffer is space in between a bicyclist and a car so that they're right next to each other. They're not right next to each other. And this is what Dartmouth looks like right now with 12-foot wide lanes and 8-foot parking lanes throughout most of the corridor. And then going back to that parking slide I mentioned earlier, when you have such infrequent parking, it makes the lane effectively operate as a 20-foot lane, which is very conducive to speeding and not the kind of traffic speeds you would like to have on a neighborhood road like Dartmouth. And Ashley, it's up to you.
Great, thanks, David. And again, we are accepting questions. If you want to type in your questions, I see we already have, it looks like potentially over 20 plus questions. So again, we probably won't get to all of them, but the first question we have is from an anonymous person, but they're asking, why are we doing this on this road, especially, you know, given that there really don't seem to be any major fatal crashes existing on Dartmouth. Can you speak a little bit more to why we are doing this on Dartmouth?
Sure. I'll take that one. So going back a couple slides, I talked about creating a bicycle network. So Dartmouth Avenue, when it's constructed, will be a great connection between the High Line Canal and several future proposed bicycle facilities. So part of what's going on Dartmouth will give people to move throughout the neighborhood and connect them to other bicycle facilities. So it's making bicycling a viable option for people to travel in and through Southeast Denver. It also has significant traffic calming benefits. Then when you remove that 20 foot of open space and actually stripe it for a designated width, it will have traffic calming effects, which will slow people down. And part of the ethics and the idea behind Vision Zero is that you aren't just reactive to what's happening. You want to be proactive. And when you see conditions that are conducive to fatal injuries and deaths, that you proactively try to eliminate those. And that's what this project accomplishes.
Great, thank you. Another question that I see has already popped up a few times is, who is the owner of the street in front of my house? David, do you want to take that one as well?
Sure, that's a great question. So the owner of the street is the city, and the city, it's public right of way. And according to the city charter, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure has ultimate oversight and authority in the public right of way.
Okay. And I think we have time for one more quick question, which is, and then we'll keep moving on, but it looks like it's from Beverly asking, is this project a done deal? David, do you want to take that one as well?
Sure, I'll take that. Yeah, so thank you for that question, Beverly. The intent of this meeting is to show you the recommended and ultimate design of this project, and to be accountable to you, the public, as to why we made that decision. So we are nearing completion on design. So I would say with respect to major changes, we are done with that point.
Great. Thank you. And again, please continue to submit your questions. We will continue to address them. And with that, I believe I'll be handing it back. Oh, sorry. Before we do that, we want to ask you another polling question, again, to kind of get everyone engaged with us. So if everyone has a moment, we'd love for you to just answer this. Why do you drive, walk, bike on Dartmouth Avenue or the most often? Is it because you live there? Is it because you work along there? Is it because someone you know or your children goes to Slavens? Do you use the High Line Canal or other area trails often? Is it because you ride your bicycle or walk on Dartmouth Avenue for recreational purposes? Or do you use Dartmouth simply to get to other destinations? Or have we missed it completely? Is there some other reason you're on Dartmouth? Give everyone just a few more seconds. All right, let's see the results of our poll. So 54% of folks live along Dartmouth, which makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of concern in the community and interest in this project. We also have a number of folks, about the next highest is 16%, that travel along Dartmouth to get to other destinations. So a lot of other folks using it to kind of get through the neighborhood. Great. Thank you very much for that. And let's move on to our next section.
Okay, so just thank you everyone again for your great comments and questions, and we'll do our best to address them. I want to recap what we heard at the first time we met with you in February and what we've heard in emails and other communications since. So we broke these, what we heard down into some themes. Safety was a big one. Many of you were concerned about how this project would impact drop off and pickup for Slavens Elementary. Many were concerned with intersections and general roadway conditions. And then of course, parking. So those were the major themes. And then you can see it actually how it broke down a little bit further. And what was interesting to see is that that safety were the two highest scoring categories of feedback, things we heard. And then also school loading. And wanted to let you all know in attendance that we have been working closely with Slavens. We have our Safe Routes to School team offering resources to them. Several of our staff met with their administrators and observed pickup operations. So we're working closely with them as well. And then following that, parking and general project support and so on. Okay, so now we're just gonna talk about how what you said impacted the final design and what we're showing to you this evening. So actually, this is Bryce. So I'm going to hand it over to Bryce, who is our design lead and a transportation engineer in Dottie Engineering.
Yeah, thank you, David. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. As David said, my name is Bryce Hammerton. I am the engineering lead for this project, and I wanted to discuss some of the data and design. So first, I just wanted to relay our parking data. And as you can see, only 3% to 6% was utilized. The times chosen were professional best practice, being the weekday early morning, weekday late afternoon, and a Saturday midday peak. So we can get to the next slide. And then before we get into the proposed cross section, I just wanted to go over how we address some of the concerns that David laid out for you. So first, safety for all users. We will have narrow travel lanes, which provide traffic calming. And slower speeds means less fatalities. Next, safety for bicyclists. An upgraded facility will be installed going from a sharrow to a painted buffer. And this will add increased distance between bicyclists and cars. Next, the school loading zone. We do have a continuous working relationship with Slavens through our Safe Routes to School program. And we will be maintaining a loading zone in front of the school between Clayton and Dallas. Operations. We do have city processes which will be followed for construction, deliveries, pickup, drop-offs, and solid waste pickup. So public on-street parking. Utilization is very low, as we have been told, and as the data shows. So we will be removing parking from the street. However, we will work with the community to identify remaining street parking available in the neighborhood. Roadway conditions. A street resurfacing will improve the pavement quality. Intersection safety, particularly Colorado. We will have improved marking and signage to better direct vehicle traffic and bicycle traffic. So now just a reminder to submit comments and questions.
Yeah, and with that, we'll take a quick break to ask a few more questions. So the first one, maybe Bryce, you can take a crack at, and maybe if needed, David could follow up, but what alternatives, and this comes from Jason, what alternatives to no street parking were considered? And maybe while you're addressing this, David, can you flip back to that parking data slide so people can just see when the data was collected? Please, thank you. So again, Bryce, the question is, what alternatives did we look at that maybe looked at keeping street parking?
Yeah, so when we first started looking at this project in concept design, we did look at alternatives that included keeping parking. So that wasn't something that we just immediately threw out. I think that's what this question was getting at. David, do you have anything else to add to that?
Right. And then I would say that's, but then that became a trade-off between us being able to provide the best facility possible and what was important for bicyclists. And again, going to our city goals and our uses of the public right-of-way, in that the city, in this instance, values the safety of people using and on the roadway higher than sparsely parked vehicle storage. And also the context is important too. You know, this would be a different conversation if we were in a heavily parked area where residents did not have driveways that can accommodate multiple vehicles and also garages in most instances. So the context is important to consider and something we considered here too. But ultimately trying to get towards our safety goals, making a better facility that would traffic calm and also give our operations a more consistent ability with trash removal and snow plowing. A parking removal was the best option.
Great. Thank you, David. One more question, and again, maybe asking you to flip back to that, that matrix that talks about why and how we selected a buffered bike lane. And the question is the speed rating on, you know, in this matrix, the speed that we're considering is it the posted speed or is it the speed that folks are actually going, the measured speeds?
Yeah, Bryce,
It
do you want to
is.
ask that? Yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, it is measured speeds. It's not posted speeds. Yes, that may surprise some people based on what you feel traffic is. But as the data shows, it is right around 25 miles per hour.
Great. Great, thank you. All right, let's keep rolling. So I think that's back to you as well, Bryce, on the actual, review of the design.
Yep. So, okay, now we will get into the proposed cross sections. The first section here is from University to Josephine. And this section just shows the turn lane on the approach to the intersection. So obviously here we wanted to maintain as safe a facility as possible. So we did maintain the bike lane to the intersection, but we were not able to keep a buffer just with the space we have and the amount of turns on that approach. Something else to note on that last cross section, and that you will see on all of these cross sections, is the 10-foot travel lane. So if you remember from the existing cross section, it was 12 feet. So we are narrowing those travel lanes. So then the next cross section is two different stretches, from Josephine to Clayton and from Dallas to Colorado. And as you can see here, we do have a buffer to go along with a 10-foot travel lane and a 6-foot bike lane in each direction. And then the final section is from Clayton Street to Dallas Way in front of Slavin's. And as you can see, there is a loading zone maintained on the north side of the street. So we will not be able to have a buffer here because of space, but we do have narrower travel lanes and we are maintaining a bike lane. So this is just a photo of an example of East Florida Ave. And Dartmouth will look very similar to this. The only main difference is we will be having dash striping at 45 degrees within the buffer. And then something else that is interesting about this photo is it shows during trash removal, a bicyclist still has plenty of room to get around the trash can, which fits nicely in the gutter. And so now we will get to Mark Daniels to discuss installation schedule.
Hey everybody, my name is Mark Daniels. I am the acting project manager for this project, for both in design and in construction. And a few of the things I want to talk about is kind of the timing on how we've gotten to where we're at now. Back in November, we performed the data collection. That was with the designer being able to go out and actually capture the different data. That is shown in October. We also completed the parking studies. There was traffic studies also included. During December, we were researching what this data actually meant and how it would affect the design itself. February, we met, we discussed what the project would be, and we listened to some of your concerns. Now we are here, trying to educate on what the design intent is before we actually finish the design and start construction. Construction is scheduled to begin sometime in mid-June. What you'll be seeing outside is the start of construction beginning with milling efforts. This is where they'll take the top 1 to 2 inches of concrete or asphalt off the road itself to repave and provide a new surface along East Dartmouth from University to Colorado. This milling will take about 3 days, and the paving will follow about 2 weeks after that and last about 5 days. I'm saying about and a little loose on the schedule because depending on weather and scheduling, and with this whole coronavirus stay at home, some of the activities may be affected. Striping down the road will take place about 3 days after the paving. This takes time for the roadway itself to cure and be able to adhere any of the paint or other thermoplastics that we'd be using. The whole striping operations will take about 1 week. Some of the notifications that you'll see prior to construction. The Bikeway group will be flyering to the affected areas 2 weeks prior to the start of construction. So you have plenty of notification before construction to begin. You'll also receive a notice of construction from the paving group. The paving group will set notices about 3 days prior to the start of milling. And you'll also start to see traffic control being set up during that time as well. 48 hours prior to construction, there will be markings labeled out, or A-frames, signage posting for no parking for the remainder part of the construction activities. And then you should be able to see final signage and everything that will then officially open up the bike lanes as usable bike lanes about 1 week after final markings are completed.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mark. And thank you, everybody, Mark, David, Bryce, for all your information. We have a good amount of time left, so I think we'll be able to get to a number of questions here. So we'll start out with, let's see, we got a question. Throw this one over to you, Bryce. So why are we not following what, this comes from John, why are we not following what Inglewood already has in place on the west side of University? Can you speak to that, please?
Sure. So what the Inglewood has is essentially a shared bike and parking lane. And that creates a very unpredictable environment for both people driving their car near a bicyclist, and then also for a bicyclist. It's fine if there's no one there parked, but as soon as someone is parked there, then a bicyclist has to immediately merge into the vehicle lane or into what we call the door zone, which is near a parked car, where they can open their door into a bicyclist. Bottom line, it's not safe for people parking their car, it's not safe for bicyclists, and it's not safe for people driving. It's not a best practice. It's not a facility that the city of Denver would ever install going forward. Safety is our #1 goal in these projects, and it's not a design that is in harmony with best practices.
Yeah, seconding that from what David said, yeah, the city of Denver will typically want a 3-foot buffer between a bike lane and a parking lane for the reasons that David mentioned.
Awesome, thank you. Bryce, maybe you can start us off with this one. Is there still an additional opportunity to add safety items or elements like speed bumps or speed tables as part of this?
Yes, there definitely is. Right now we are going through 60% design. So we're definitely not all the way there. Especially at the Colorado intersection, we are going to be using data to drive what type of solutions we come up with for that intersection.
Yeah, and just building off that, I mean, we definitely want to hear opportunities in ways we can make this a safer, better street for you. It may not be that all of those improvements in your suggestions get in on our paving schedule, but they are still valid, and we can aggressively pursue funding opportunities to make the street work better for you.
And I just also actually want to add on to that. So yes, there's room for safety improvements. Those ones specifically, speed bumps and speed tables, are not currently tools in Denver's toolbox for traffic calming. So we aren't really deploying those specifically, and that's kind of its own conversation. You're welcome to send us an email and we can have that. But so the point is, yes, we can definitely add further safety improvements. Those ones specifically, probably not. And that's for larger policy reasons at the city. All right, so let's see, question number 3. So since we are removing parking, where are folks supposed to park when they come to visit the people who live along Dartmouth? David, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So, well, obviously it would be our preference for them to park in your driveway, but if they can't park in your driveway, then there are adjacent streets, either to the north or the south, that you would then park on those side streets. The parking utilization is comparable to what it is on Dartmouth. They are lightly parked and do have room for your guests to park their cars. So that should accommodate the people who visit you.
Great. I would just like to add to that too. In the last public meeting we had, that question was asked, and then the follow-up question was, well, then won't you be creating an unsafe condition about crossing the street, etc. And I have a couple of thoughts on that I think are important to share, or maybe not important, but useful, which is, at every intersection there, by, I think it's state law, there is a crosswalk there technically, and that, cars are supposed to yield to pedestrians crossing. However, if there becomes a crossing issue, again, what I said earlier in the meeting is that our right-of-way is not static, it is dynamic. If we are starting to see increased volume of crossing the street, we can always reevaluate and see, are there other safety improvements that can be made to make that crossing safer. So I just want to reiterate that, again, this whole thing, nothing is static. It's always dynamic. We're always working to address safety issues as they arise. All right, so let me see, next question. Can we go back to the design of the bike lane at Slavin specifically? Is it only pickup or drop off where people can park there? Maybe Bryce, do you want to handle that one?
Yes, sure. And thank you for your question. That is intended to just be a loading zone.
So that will only be during pickup or drop off hours. And then how does that operate otherwise?
And then otherwise, there will be no parking.
Okay, great. David, did you have anything to add on that? Or?
Yeah, just like any other loading zone throughout the city, that's enforced no parking unless otherwise permitted, during loading zone hours.
Great, thank you. Mark, question for you. Will we be able to get in and out of our garages during construction?
So I currently just sent a text to the milling construction group to find out how that would actually affect your access. It will take a couple days to be able to go through and mill, and typically they do one side of the road before doing the other. There will be a time for a small section of time where the milling machine will be blocking your driveway, but it'll be a short period of time before moving on down the road.
Great, thank you for that. All right. So another question I'm seeing here about traffic calming. What consideration was given to traffic calming, whether it was reducing the speed limit, adding roundabouts, electronic speed monitoring, etc.? Was that any of that considered? Why or why not?
I can take that, Ashley. So I think the first tool in our toolbox here is the one we're taking, which is reducing the travel lane width. As you can see here, reducing it down to a 10-foot travel lane, which was effectively in some instances working as a 20-foot travel lane. So we are going to do this phase first, and of course we will go out and continue to collect data and monitor this. And if there are other things that we can do to improve safety, we will work that into our Vision Zero safety program. But this is our best, and the first thing we would lead with is traffic calming through lane widths or lane diets.
And I would just maybe add to that a little bit, which is that this project is one of 3 mechanisms in which we are working very hard to build out the mayor's goal of building out 125 bike miles by 2023, it is. And so with that, we kind of have multiple tools. One are those large scale construction projects. And then one of those tools is this paving coordination. So we are working on projects like this throughout the city where we have our paving crews moving through the area. And as they go back and restripe, it's a great opportunity for us to implement the bike lanes that have been identified through many, many years of planning to go on those roadways. And so again, as David pointed out, this roadway was identified way back in our original Denver Moves Bikeway plan to move forward as a bikeway. And so, that bike lane design lends itself to the signing and striping. The idea of roundabouts, et cetera, those are the things that we start to consider when we look at both neighborhood bikeways, which are kind of those higher level bike facilities where we're seeing very large volumes of cyclists and trying to kind of balance that with the traffic that's moving through that area. And then, so that's part of the consideration is just how do we get a lot of those bike lanes out the door? And again, this works well as a striping project to begin with. And as David said, we can continue to evaluate if this, again, nothing static, all dynamic. If down the road we find we need more intense traffic calming, we can definitely look into that. All right, so next question. There are turning issues on Dartmouth and Clayton during drop-off and pickup times. Are there any improvements that can be made as part of this project to help with that? David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Bryce and I have talked about that, and after our field visit, we think that there are some paint and designating the stop bars and things that can help. One of the issues that we perceived was what the city or the school's traffic crossing guard would help with is he would park his car right at the corner so that it would prevent people from using the parking lane as a turn lane. And so we think that with the updated striping that will help eliminate that. But again, we will continue to monitor it, and there are other improvements that can be deployed relatively quickly that we can do that will improve that too. So again, it's an iterative process, and we're gonna start with this. But yes, it was definitely in our consideration as we laid the design out. And
I just want to emphasize too that in addition to this project, we recognize that there are just generally some circulation issues, et cetera, during pickup drop-off times at Slavens Elementary. We've been out there to meet both with the principal and do what we call a safe routes to school site visit. And we are actually bringing Slavens in for some exciting new beta testing that our Safe Routes program is doing. So in addition to seeing what we can do kind of from the engineering side of things, other city staff members are also working with Slavens to think through what are some of the other programmatic and operational improvements that can be made to help improve circulation around the school, because I think that there are some opportunities. And again, this project helped kind of emphasize the need for that. This project won't necessarily solve it, but other staff members with the city are definitely working with the school to try to do our best to address it. All right, so next question. This one comes from Craig. Will the bike ped safety at Dartmouth in Colorado be improved during this project or future projects? Maybe Bryce, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Craig. Yes, bike and ped safety will be improved at Colorado. And we are going to be using data to drive our solutions there. The biggest one is trying to maintain a bike lane all the way through Dartmouth to the Colorado intersection to increase safety. And then in terms of getting across the intersection at Colorado, we really want to improve signage and striping specifically to get people across the intersection safely.
And I would add one other tool in our toolbox that we're looking at for that intersection, given that we are kind of constrained budget-wise in terms of civil improvements, et cetera, is we are looking at what other operational improvements. So one way that you can help folks flow more predictably through an intersection is making sure the right amount of time is given to the right lanes, whether it's turning or through movements, et cetera. So in addition to both the pavement and the signing improvements we're looking at, we are also looking at what operational improvements can be made at this time. And again, this will continue to be on our radar as far as what other improvements can be made. They may not all be addressed with this project, but we, Councilwoman Black has made it continues to advocate for safety at this intersection, and we are working on how we can continue to address that. There aren't a lot of easy solutions, but we're going to keep exploring them both through this project and future efforts. So next question comes from Councilwoman Black. Can families with strollers or people walking their dogs use the bike lanes because they can't fit safely on the narrow sidewalks? David, do you want to start with that one, or Bryce?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilwoman Black. So, to be honest, I don't know the answer. I would say anecdotally, yes. And that, I've seen people running in bike lanes and obviously using scooters and strollers. And, I think it's a little bit of what your personal comfort allows. I don't think that anyone would give you a ticket or a citation for doing that. I think the issue we have with combining pedestrians and bicyclists is that sometimes everyone thinks the road belongs to them. And so it's just, why we design like multi-use paths like the Cherry Creek Trail or the South Platte Trail or the High Line to have a width of 12 feet is to give everyone's room to breathe. And in a space that's 6 to 8 feet wide, that might not quite be enough. So I would say that it kind of is a little bit of a gray area. Does anyone have more to add on that?
So
I think you did a good job answering that one, David.
If anything, this is Eileen. One of the things, as Ashley mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, that I want to reiterate right now is that the questions and answers, we'll be posting those as an FAQ on the website, and Ashley can repeat that website and how to access that after the meeting. So we'll provide clarification through that mechanism as well.
yes, awesome. Thank you very much, Eileen. Mark, maybe you could take a crack at this one. Did we ever consider widening the road as an option?
I wasn't part of the original study that took place back in the 10 years ago timeframe. But the budget that we had available for us, this is the first, again, tool in the toolbox, is to be able to try to lay down, financially effective way forward. In order to widen the road, you'd have to tear out the curbs, you'd have to go through sidewalks, curb and gutter, driveways. The scale of the project with widening a road grows immensely at that point. So at this point, that was not necessarily considered, more from a financial standpoint.
David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, on top of that, ripping up people's sprinkler systems and trees, it would become a close to a multi-million dollar project.
Absolutely.
Impacts to every homeowner would be drastic. So
street signals, everything.
And I would just add on to that. I think, again, what holds true is that we do truly consider every trade-off as we move through project design. And at this point, we feel like there are a lot of good options on the table without having to go to that drastic of a conversation. And so, you know, impacting people's their homes and their right, or the space in front of their homes is definitely a very, very challenging conversation with folks. So I think we have some really good options as it stands, and that's why we're moving forward with what we have. So, all right, we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up. Let's start with, how will workers during home renovations on Dartmouth, how will they be able to park their cars? That's a great question, and one we get asked a lot. Well, actually not a ton, but definitely I know that there are renovations, especially in this area, that continue to happen. There are a few options. Of course, we know that the majority of homes on this do have large driveways, and so those are an option for parking. There are also the opportunities to park on side streets. And finally, if you do feel that closing down the bike lane is a necessity to move your renovation forward, we do have a process at the city for obtaining a permit to close a travel lane, and a bike lane is considered a travel lane. So just like you would another travel lane, like if you were going to take up a travel lane on another street, you would need to get a permit. So we do have a process. I mean, obviously it's going to be expensive and it's going to be a difficult process. We try to find other solutions before we go to closing down travel lanes, but that is something on the table if your project needs that. So that is an option. So one last question, or no, 2 last questions, and then we'll wrap up. One is from Jonathan. It says, is there a chance that the sidewalks could be widened? Again, let's kick that over to Bryce. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so similar to what Mark went through earlier with widening the road, as a part of this project, we were not looking to do that just based on funding, but that's not ruling anything out in the future.
I can add a little bit of addition to that. So basically the city has 3 ways to address sidewalk construction. One is sidewalk gaps, and the city views that where a sidewalk does not exist is the biggest impediment to pedestrian mobility. So areas where the city is missing sidewalk, that's a top priority. Second is a sidewalk that exists but is in bad condition. The city has the neighborhood sidewalk repair program, which will work with the neighborhoods across Denver in about a 10 to 11 year time frame, and working with neighborhoods to repair damaged sidewalks. And then third are what we call deficient sidewalks, and what are commonly referred to as Hollywood sidewalks, which are sidewalks that are in okay condition but are not wide enough, as you know, for someone pushing a stroller, someone in a wheelchair. And to be honest, it's a really, really expensive and complicated endeavor for some of the reasons we mentioned earlier with respects to ripping out curb, ripping out people's ripping out guards and gardens and yards and sprinkler systems, or moving it out into the curb. It's just a very, very expensive thing. And we don't have a strategy solidified around that effort yet, but we are making progress on sidewalks, focusing on sidewalk gaps and then damaged sidewalks.
Ashley, I think you're muted still.
Well, that doesn't help, does it? Cool. What I was saying is very final question. David, maybe you could take this. There are a lot of people asking why neighborhood bikeway option is not what we're moving forward with. Why are we doing a buffered bike lane?
Great question. So for that, I will take us back to our handy dandy selection chart. And the ideal circumstances for a neighborhood bikeway, there's two things. There's speeds and volumes. And the volumes on Dartmouth are just too high because what you are doing in a neighborhood bikeway is creating a shared road environment and where bikes are sharing the lane with cars now, which is what people are doing now. But again, with where we're trying to go, we're trying to get to a network that encourages more people to ride, not just the people who are currently riding. There are too many cars along Dartmouth right now for it to be a viable neighborhood bikeway. Neighborhood bikeways are for local streets that have low volumes where you would feel comfortable riding in the lane with your children, with your elderly parents. It's what we call an all ages and abilities facility. So the volumes are too high and the speeds are at the threshold of being too high too. So it's just where we are, it's not in that range.
Great. Well, thank you very much, David. And thank you to all of our panelists, David, Bryce, Mark, Eileen, thank you. Thank you to our support team. And most importantly, thank you all community members. We really, truly appreciate you coming. Again, this has been recorded. It will be available on our website within the next week or so at bit.ly/bikepaving. We will also be creating a summary FAQ sheet that we will make available. We have emails for everyone who has registered for the webinar, and we will continue to use those to update you about the project, specifically the project. And again, you're always welcome to email us at bikes@denvergov.org. And one more thing, if you weren't able to register or you didn't use your own email to register, you can go back to that web page at the bit.ly bike paving. And there is an option to submit your email and sign up specifically for updates about this project. So again, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it and hope everyone stays safe and healthy and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.